Hey guys, this is Mike from Sons Liberty Gunworks, and I'm excited to show y'all the new Mark 1. The goal was to build the ultimate fighting carbine, and obviously we had the professional end user in mind, but like anything that Sons Liberty does, no matter what we develop something for, I want to make it available to the commercial market as well. The first thing I want to go over with the rifle is the actual form factor, right? Because every series of the Mark 1 is going to have relatively the same form factor. When we started going down this path of trying to give the end user as many options as possible, we noticed that you are a bit limited on rail real estate. So one of the first things that we did for this rifle was we wanted to make the marriage between the upper and the rail to have continuity. There's no dead space. If you look at a lot of ARs, there's a dead space right here that's unusable. So if you wanted to bridge that gap, you really can't. So this is an entire section that's pretty important that's unusable, right? On the Mark 1, you have perfect continuity to where if you had a magnifier, an optic, inline thermal, or whatever you wanted, you could bridge and use that entire space. We also added more pick slots to the rear, and we lengthened the rail as far as you could to the back of the muzzle device to where it doesn't make contact with the rail, but you're getting right up to the back again to maximize that rail real estate. On the top rail, going all the way down from the upper to the end of the handguard, you have a very deep channel for cable routing. For the end user that actually has thermals and pressure pads and lights and whatever else, there's a lot of cables. We want to be able to not make that into like a giant bird's nest. So this channel is meant to be able to zip tie or secure those cables any way you want in there and kind of really get them tight to the gun and out of the way. With cables in mind, between each Picatinny slot, we scalloped these slots here on the rail and like actually made them dull and round, so it doesn't cut the wire whenever you're running the wire, going under one of these fast holes meant for like zip ties or however you're setting that up. We don't want to cut the wire. Rigidity for the rail and the way it marries to the upper receiver was really critical, right? Especially if you're going to be using lasers or enablers on there. You cannot have that move. So the drive lock system obviously was an easy choice because this thing is extremely rigid, does not move. And the deflection on here is pretty impressive, or the lack of deflection rather, right? One of the things that's different between the Mark 1 and say our broadsword is that internally, instead of using one steel anti-rotational dowel, there's two. So you've actually doubled the shearing force for anything rotational. Then of course you have the machined ears, those tabs that are going to marry into the upper receiver itself and creating an extremely robust and rigid upper receiver. So anything that you're mounting on the top of here, you're not going to have deflection. That was critical to the goal. Another modification that we made to our drive lock system was, instead of it being round on the bottom here by the barrel nut, we actually cut it flat. And that flat allows you a better surface to rest it on whenever you're shooting off of barricades or anything else. And we wanted this juncture here between the rail and the lower receiver, if you wanted to drive that mag well into something for stability, that was part of the design for how we did that. Going on to the lower receiver, obviously we put a slightly more aggressive flare to that mag well. If you notice here on the mag button side, we've again made a lot more aggressive fencing around there, so like the mag cannot be actuated if you're rounding corners or if there's something else, doing something obviously active with the rifle. We wanted to really protect that mag button from any type of accidental actuation. We also put a pretty aggressive fence around this bolt catch. If you look at the Mark 1 bolt catch, the bottom paddle is extended to the rear a little bit so it can be accessed by left-handed guys here. And we wanted a lot of paddle real estate to make it easy to hit. But normally if you have a lot of extra paddle real estate, it makes it a snagging hazard. So in comes this really aggressive fence that we built around the bolt release so that you can't get slings or any other kind of gear caught on there. You still have a big paddle, but you've eliminated the snagging there. If you look at the rifle dead on, you can also see how flat the bolt catch sits to the rifle itself. You see a lot of bolt catches that have some of these features, but they stick out so far on the bottom. Again, creating more of a snagging hazard. This one, we kept it extremely flat. to the gun. One of the first things that you notice when you pick up the Mark 1 is, number one, its weight, right? So the rifle is like right at 6 pounds or just under 6 pounds, depending on the configuration that you want it. Another thing you notice immediately is the comfort. So this was specifically designed, and we went through attempt after attempt after attempt and a sample after sample after sample to make sure that this area here was super comfortable whenever carrying the weapon over long periods of time or standing at high port, low port, whatever. There's no hot spots in the trigger guard. Like, it's not uncomfortable. There's nothing digging into your knuckles. It's hard to explain, obviously, verbally. If you hold one, though, I think it becomes immediately obvious that some thought went into that. We also designed it to create a little bit more space between the forward assist button and the charging handle, making it easier to grab on that side. You don't want that area as congested. Another feature of the rifle is that this port door was made to be removed without having to take the handguard off, right? If you have a bunch of stuff on the handguard, you don't want to take that off and have to re-zero or reset that up. We'd rather be able to remove the port door from the rear, so the rod can actually be removed in this direction, port door replaced and reinstalled, and that would speed up the having to service something like that. As being an armorer and a gunsmith myself, that was something that I thought would be kind of a neat thing. Again, so one of the first things people are going to notice when they pick up a Mark 1 is the weight. The rifle is very lightweight for being as strong as it is. With having this much rigidity on the upper and the rail and just how kind of overbuilt things are, the rifle is still incredibly light. Part of that has to do with our new medium contour barrel, which we made it pretty much as lightweight as you can while still maintaining enough rigidity in the barrel for precision and to minimize any type of suppressor shift. There are 3 different barrel options that the Mark 1 can come with. You have your chrome moly, you have a precision stainless, and then you have your R-mod barrel option, right? If insane, almost academic level barrel life is your goal, you have your R-mod. You have chrome moly that's been around forever, that everybody's pretty familiar with. Then of course you have your stainless options, which are meant for just precision. Now, all 3 of these are going to use our P3 rifling. And the interesting thing about the P3 rifling form is that rifling legitimately makes the life of the barrel less dependent on the throat. Most barrels die because of throat erosion. That's where the accuracy or the life starts to drop off. That P3 rifling is less dependent on the throat erosion, meaning that you're gonna have to go ahead and kill the whole barrel, not just the little section of the throat. And we've seen that even on the stainless barrel, which is kind of counterintuitive, the barrel life is considerably higher than people would imagine. Also, all of the Mark 1 barrels are going to come with our 5/8 thread on the muzzle. We have found that having more material at the crown and at the muzzle keeps the groups tighter even under pretty extreme heat. Now, I've noticed talking to really sophisticated end users from all over the country and getting feedback from guys that have played with it. Not a lot of these guys are super interested in specs, right? You could tell them what the barrel's made of, you could tell them what the bolt's made of. That's not necessarily what's getting their attention. What I have noticed, though, is that when you pick the rifle up and you shoot it, that's what a lot of guys are focused on. Like, how does it feel and how does it shoot? Getting into the mechanical design of the gun, it was incredibly high on the priority list to make the weapon very shootable, okay? We wanted to make the weapon as shootable as possible without sacrificing any reliability. Typically what you see whenever shootability is the goal is somebody will just undergas the gun, and then that way you have to underbuffer the gun. All they've done was take gas away from the system, and that's the answer to trying to make the gun more shootable, or they'll lengthen the gas system, right? I believe those things are typically done at the expense of reliability. The gun has a more narrow operational envelope. Operational envelope is pretty much like the span or the width of how many variables the rifle can plow through and keep functioning. If you have a very narrow operational envelope, the rifle's going to only work within this set of conditions. If you have a very wide operational envelope, the rifle's going to continue to work under these sets of conditions. And for a fighting rifle, you want the rifle to be able to work in the most wide range of conditions. Remember, nothing is static. Like ambient air temperature, the temperature of the weapon, the wear of gas rings, wear of springs, ammunition variability, suppressed, unsuppressed, dirty, dry, lube burning off the gun. These are all variables that are constantly changing in the use of the rifle. And we want a rifle that's extremely forgiving to pretty much any condition that it's being used in, especially less than optimal conditions. To have a rifle that is highly shootable and have a wide operational envelope it takes a lot more than simply reducing the gas volume or reducing the mass. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to maintain the mass, the driving force that's cycling the gun, and have ample and adequate gas to drive that gun through adversity. You can use less gas up front if you have less friction inside the gun. Inside a Mark I, the Mark I upper receiver raceways have a completely different coating than the outside of the gun. And the carriers have a different coating specifically to reduce friction. That way, all you're having to budget the gas for is to move mass. We've still kept the A5 H2, so you have a lot of mass in the buffer. And then obviously a full profile bolt carrier group. So we still have adequate mass in there, but your gas is now only budgeted for really driving mass as opposed to overcoming friction. You know, that was a challenge to get this gun highly shootable while still being like very reliable. The goal of the Mark I rifle is to tailor the rifle to the end user based on that end user's like hierarchy of needs. For example, we have several different muzzle device options depending on what suppressor you're going to use to fit that 5/8 and on a 5.56 or 6mm can. You have bolt options for the Mark I, right? You have the normal mil-spec 158 bolt, and you also have an AirMet bolt, which again, the AirMet bolt is built for insane service life, very high pressure ammunition. There are other configurations of this rifle that might be mechanically more demanding on the gun itself to where that AirMet bolt might make sense. I think the AirMet bolt is almost overkill in most applications, but it is available, if you wanted to configure the rifle that way. So that was a run through of the Mark I. Our goal was to build the ultimate fighting carbine. I honestly think that we have reliability, shootability, weight, form factor, corrosion resistance, endurance. The gun is pretty awesome, and look forward to getting it out there.